very harrowing gospel. Almost it's hard to say that it is truly good news, which is what gospel means, as we hear about the destruction of so much. Everything you see here will be laid waste. There will not even be a single stone upon another stone. But the good news comes at the very end, even after you will be handed over and some of you will be put to death. Not a hair on your head will be destroyed. By your perseverance you will secure your lives. Jesus says to us, you can trust in me. I am trustworthy. A lot of times we put our trust in the things of this world which don't end up being able to stay. Just having to care for all the buildings on this campus. I'm sure when Father Ham built this wing and when you put on the stones on the outside of the church and all the stuff that was done, it seemed like this is so good and strong and lasting, but we continue to have to work on the mortar, and this wall is cracking, there's a leak in the roof, okay, we got this and this. All of you as homeowners, you know all this. You have to deal with it all the time. But the things of this world don't last. And yet, we so often put our trust and our hope in them. All of this is going to disappear. Jesus says, put your trust in me. I will last. I will hold secure. Next weekend we end the year of mercy. And this extraordinary Jubilee year where God has poured out such grace and mercy into our lives. He's poured His love into us, and He says, come, be like the Father. He says, merciful like the Father. He calls us to recognize how much mercy He is pouring down upon us, that we may be able to run to Him. And at the core and heart of the message of divine mercy is trust. Just look at the images we have. It's at the bottom of the images it says, Jesus, I trust in you. When everything else falls apart, can we say, Jesus, I trust in you? He is trustworthy. St. Faustina says that Jesus' mercy is an ocean, but for us to receive it, we need a vessel to be able to carry that water. And the vessel is trust. If we have a vessel as small as a thimble, a little bit, that's all the mercy we're going to get. How big is our trust in God? How big is our trust in God? You know, the biggest struggle that we have in our lives, the darkest darkness, the heaviest burden, God can handle. God wants to handle. I think about a little 1-year-old who might be trying to pick up something heavy. Impossible for this little child. And this child might be thinking, this is an impossible task to try to lift this thing. But when their mommy or daddy comes, they lift not only the thing, but they lift the child too. Without any effort. And our God, it doesn't take any effort for Him to lift us to His heart. It doesn't take Him any effort to lift the heavy burdens that are too heavy for us to carry. The only question is, will we continue to say, I want to carry this? Or will we trust Him and say, God, you carry this. Will you lift this up for me? I can't hold it. It's too much. There have been times, and Granted, I haven't had extraordinary suffering or trials in my life. But the trials and the suffering that have come have seemed really big. I think we've all experienced that in one level or another. But when those trials come, if I try to handle it on my own, what happens? I end up going crazy. But in those times when I say, Jesus, I trust in you, doesn't mean the trial goes away. But it does mean that I have hope, and I know God is carrying it for me, and He walks me through it. And I can say, I can keep going because I know that God is carrying me. How big is our trust? If we follow God, if we place our trust in Him, He will remove our fear. He promises this to us. He says 365 times in the Bible, do not be afraid. Not because there's nothing to fear, but because He's bigger than our fears. There's a great, great line from the immortal VeggieTales, which goes, God is bigger than the boogeyman. You gotta check it out. God is bigger than all of our fears. He is greater than all of it. And He says, I promise you, if you put your trust in me, if you follow me, I will remove your fear. It doesn't mean that we won't have moments of fear, but then we'll go back and say, yes, in this fear, I throw myself to you, O Lord. And He'll take away that fear. And He even says to us, we can act like little children and say, God, you promised. And He will uphold His promise. Do not be afraid. What's the worst trouble that you can imagine happening to you? The worst fear? The worst trial? What is the darkest darkness that could ever touch your life? God's light is stronger. God's power is greater. And His love and His mercy endure forever. Sometimes the biggest trial is not something out there. Sometimes the biggest trial and struggle is in here. When we look and experience our own weakness, our own frailty, our own brokenness, our own sinfulness, where we find, I love my sin. I love to sin, and yet I hate it. Kind of like, for those of you who are Lord of the Rings fans, kind of like Gollum, who loves the ring and hates it. I see nobody cares about the Lord of the Rings. I won't use that analogy to any other masses. That's okay. My precious. The Lord knows all of this. And if we love our sin but we hate it too, if we just throw ourselves on His mercy endures forever. Jesus, I trust in you, even in my brokenness, even in my weakness where I keep failing over and over and over and over, and that's not enough overs, we keep failing over and many times over, exponentially over and over and over again. And God says to us, hear this now, He is not scandalized by our littleness, by our brokenness, by our weakness. He's not scandalized by our humanity. He loves us even with all of this. And He calls us to His heart. As we move out of this extraordinary year, mercy doesn't end. Poor Deacon Tom. He keeps saying, when is this year of mercy? When is mercy going to end? He's joking, but mercy doesn't end, nor does our call for mercy end, nor does our call to trust in God. This is rather the beginning. This year was the foundation. So let us step out in faith that as we move after next Sunday out of the extraordinary year, that we continue to make extraordinary strides to grow in mercy, to grow in trust in God. May we build that foundation so that now, whenever the struggles come, the darkness, whenever we're struggling with our own brokenness, whenever fears come up, we can say, Jesus, I trust in you.